Okay, hello, thank you for coming. We're just going to start because it's time. So I'm Karen McDermott. I'm with, which order are we going on? Ida Hadi and Sophia Di Leonardo, all from Glasgow. We're part of the team that's developed this MOOC. So we're going to do a bit of a whistle-stop tour and snapshot of part of the MOOC. Sorry, we've got different things in front of me. I'm trying to juggle them. Okay. We are here representing a whole team. The project worked with a team from Indonesia and the UK, so people that are not here are obviously all on the slides, particularly Nirmala and Daniel helped with the preparation of this talk, although this is all the people, not all the people, but a lot of the people that were involved in the actual project. So we need to say a great big thank you to them for the MOOC as well. This is a British Council UK Indonesia Digital Innovation Grants project, which came our way. We were asked if we wanted to be involved with it. In terms of the project background and the context for the MOOC, it's responding to obviously the growth of EMI and internationalisation of higher education in Indonesia. It's an emerging EMI context. It's part of the more recent huge surge there, and also to challenges that have been identified in previous studies in the literature on implementation of EMI, particularly support that's available for students and teacher training or development for EMI lectures, but also ELT, EAP lectures. And so the MOOC tries to address the needs, some ways of both, and you'll see that overlap there because that's about the collaboration, which one of the aspects we were trying to foster in the creation and design of the MOOC activities, which you'll see. Hi, Jennifer. Okay. Internationalisation, higher education in Indonesia, MOOC. Okay. Okay. So in order to meet those aims, these were what we were trying to do. Develop infrastructure, capacity, and community. So the infrastructure was developing a MOOC, okay, for EMI, and you'll see ELT, EAP teachers because the teachers identified as ELT or ESP teachers, we made quite conscious decisions to talk about EAP lecturers, and we have part of the MOOC that explains why we're calling that, to showcase the expertise of our field, okay, but also for your EMI lecturers. By having a MOOC that should be open and accessible, we're hoping to build capacity and tools for teacher professional development that will be locally relevant and contextualised. And in the design, which Ida is going to talk about later also, in the types of videos and worksheets and things that we've got on it that people can use where they might have lower connectivity, for example, and be able to use whenever they want. Okay. But also developing a community, so a collaborative network. The EMI and the EAP subject specialists working together, we see a lot of work and saying this is the best way forward when we can both learn and work, learn from each other and work together, but also with researchers, because wanting to develop communities where we can continue to research the area to help and support the implementation. These are the grand plans and our ambitious aims of our very ambitious project, which started out a year or so ago. Yeah, okay, 14 months ago, with great aims, and we did do lots and lots of things, but it grew arms and legs. So there's a certain amount of curbed our enthusiasm we had to as we went along. Okay. What it came out to be was teacher professional development online course. It includes short lecture videos, and it's using UK and Indonesian academics, researching EMI and researching and teaching in EAP. So we're drawing on local specialists and other experts or speakers in the field, so we go global, local. Videos of university classes in Indonesia and interviews with teachers and students who are working in EMI in the context. So we're trying to make it really locally relevant as well. That's the background. Okay, so in this presentation, because we've obviously got limited time, we're going to talk particularly about how the literature review and the needs analysis informed the MOOC syllabus content, and the design features and the resource development, and then Sophia's going to talk about the initial launch of the workshops And I realised I forgot to put that on the slide. Okay, you're going to get all three of us talking. Okay. So this is how we went about designing the MOOC. Okay. Started with the literature review, then we had surveys and focus groups, okay, and these all fed into the design. So in the literature review, we had kind of three groups. We were talking, one group was doing the literature review on EMI in context, and that particularly drew on the expertise of the Indonesian team who knew what was happening in the area, and, for example, Nicola's research and people working in the field of general EMI to build up that area. Professional development needs of EMI lecturers, and also we were working particularly on the ELT EAP teacher needs. So we had different sections of our needs analysis, literature review. We also had a section on MOOC development, what's best practice, previous studies and how to go about it. And we were all involved, people from different teams, in all of these different parts, and they will all, we hope, get written up into different pieces at some point. Okay. From the literature review, these themes emerged as key areas to look at: materials development and the challenges, pedagogy for EMI and EAP teachers, language use, professional development needs, and technology and MOOC. So the first four ones particularly featured in the content of the MOOC. That technology and MOOC aspects influenced our design of it and the needs of the lecturers. So we have the literature review. Okay. That helped inform the survey, so we had to go through the ethical approval. I don't know if you want to say anything, I'm putting you on the spot, about the ethics procedure, because you led all of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we managed it.
Yeah. Okay. And that went through Glasgow.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Once we've done that, we designed the survey, piloted it, and the survey had 143 participants, 55 EMI lecturers, 74 ELT EAP, and 14 who were doing both. Okay. We then had focus groups, 6 different focus groups, and these were a mix. So there was EMI lecturers with more than 5-year experience, ELT lecturers with more than 5, a mixed one with more than 5, and ones with less than 5, ELT and then EMI. So we're getting a range of experience and a range of backgrounds, EMI or ELT. Okay. All of this then fed into how we designed the module content and features of resources and the activities. The surveys it was a Qualtrics survey, and SPSS was used for that, and thematic analysis for the interviews. Lots and lots of data, lots of shifting deadlines. Things always take a bit longer than we expected. We had Ramadan, if anyone's here is celebrating Eid Mubarak today, that shifted the needs analysis. So it's been going on. So when you get to the end, you might be going, why is it not live? It's because things shifted as we went along. Okay. But then how did we use this needs analysis to inform the syllabus development? So I'm going to talk through a specific example. We knew from the literature EMI, ELT teachers limited skills in supporting students' language needs, or that there are challenges in there, particularly when you'll have students with varying levels and possibly lecturers, and EMI lecturers wanting support for pedagogy and methodology. This was reflected in the questions we designed and responses. So, for example, in the questionnaire we had one of the statements, my students always understand me when I speak English. 44.4% positive, so that's 55.6 was neutral or disagree, so range of responses there. We had open-ended questions with teaching in English to match students' limited English and explaining terms. These were the most frequently mentioned language-related challenges. The focus groups, for example, we had comments with more time is spent on translating rather than understanding content. So that's an area to explore. How do you use first language effectively? And not overly surprising, less confident for people that are less experienced in EMI. Okay. So all of this was then used for the module, and one of the modules was teaching students with mixed or lower English proficiency. you're just going to see us talking about one or two modules here rather than everything. Okay. What does a module look like? Well, they're typically in 3 sections. So for this particular one, we were looking at, well, what do we do about teaching mixed ability classes? Sorry, Carmina, one of our Indonesian colleagues, did short talks on challenges and potentials, teaching strategies, ways of checking students' learning and progress. We had a section on scaffolding for mixed ability students. Sophia did one on theory and literature on scaffolding. What can teachers do and teachers say? So we're looking at, some of them are very local, some are more on general principles and theories and concepts to provide that input. And we have a section on classroom interaction and learning opportunities. And here we commissioned external UK-based experts. Steve Walsh talked on interaction and learning, so he looks at interactional competence, got little talks on that there. And then we've also got classroom recordings and interviews from Indonesia with people talking about or showing examples of how they're checking understanding, extending interaction. So we've got theory, concepts, local input, and real examples. So you'll see here A, B, C. Each module had 3 sections within it, and this is the format for pretty much all of the modules, okay, except for the first one, because there's an introduction to the MOOC, the context, the terms we use. So the first module is Introduction to EMI and EAP in EMI. Second one is Designing Learning Materials. That was a big aspect that came out. The teaching, the one I've talked about, mixed ability or limited proficiency. We have one on translanguaging and L1 use. We have one on engaging students in the classroom and one on teacher development. So this is the overall structure. We basically did our literature review, needs analysis, took all that data, worked out how to design the content. And I'm now going to pass over to Ida, who's going to talk about the design features of the MOOC.
Thank you, Carol. Okay, so building on what Carol said, I'm going to talk more about the needs analysis of the project. So it was very important for us to make sure that the project is tailored to the needs of our potential or target users, in other words, EMI and EAP subject specialists in the context of Indonesia. And for that reason, as Carol said, we conducted a needs analysis consisting of a survey with open-ended and closed-ended questions, as well as focus group interviews. But we also wanted to, looking ahead, perhaps make sure that our course, that the MOOC is embedded within the broader EMI context, and for that reason we also did some literature review to inform our needs analysis, both in terms of EMI and EAP lecturers' needs, professional development needs, as well as digital literacy, given that this was a MOOC course. So we use all that database to develop our guiding principles for the MOOC design. So the first set of data from the survey showed some sort of preferences in terms of the design of the MOOC, the fact that the majority of the participants in the needs analysis survey and focus group indicated that they would want to have some interactive elements in the MOOC. And also it was mentioned that they wanted to have opportunities to have feedback from other course participants, so a sort of a platform, a sort of an opportunity for them to interact with each other, to perhaps receive feedback on the activities that they're asked to do throughout the course, and then also a preference for having hands-on activities. And these kind of findings sort of shaped one of our main guiding principles for the MOOC design, which was including active engagement. And an example of how that informed the design of the activities, different tasks and components of the MOOC was that we made sure to include discussion forums, for example, in each module or in different sections of each module, and then make sure that we have a range of activities within and across modules. The next aspect that informed our MOOC design came from the literature review that we did on EAP, EMI, as well as MOOC users' needs. And then one aspect that emerged was the motivation, the motivational aspect, the engagement of our users. And one way to facilitate that was really for them to be able to link the learning from the MOOC to their actual practice. And that gave us the real life relevance sort of principle. And one way that we tried to kind of implement that into the MOOC design was to make sure that we provide opportunities for reflections and forward planning. So these were some activities that we included in the MOOC. I'll talk more about them later, to kind of tune in the sort of activities, so that give opportunities to our users to connect their actual practice into what they're learning in the MOOC. And also we kind of, as Carol mentioned in the introductory part of the MOOC, we made it clear also to the users how we try to address their needs, and as they were identified in the needs analysis stage of the project. And also, both combined from the survey results as well as our literature review, another aspect emerged, which was time. As we know, EMI, EAP lecturers, just like in our context, they're really busy. They have quite tight schedules on a weekly basis, so it was very important to make sure that we consider their workload when designing the MOOC and make it really user-friendly and really practical for them to be able to do it alongside their working weeks. For that kind of gave us the third principle, which is time. For just to implement that, we make sure that the maximum number of hours required for active engagement in the MOOC is 4 hours. And that also informed the design of the video lectures, which were one of the main components of the MOOC. And as Carol said, we had a combination of experts from our team, some external experts in the UK and from Indonesia to bring in their expertise. So we made sure that the videos, the guidelines we provided to the lectures was so that the lectures are kept short within 3 to 5 minutes, and then we included mini lectures rather than a long lecture of maximum 3 part lectures. And that gave us the guiding principle, as you can see with the acronym, we had the word ART, so we tried to kind of implement these guiding principles in the design of the course. So the MOOC development then, starting from the needs analysis, obviously literature review, needs analysis, kind of the stages involved in the design and development of the MOOC was pretty much, if I were to summarize, included these 4 stages. So we had the design, started with designing the templates. This was to ensure that there is consistency across the whole MOOC, given that there were different teams involved in designing the course, from obviously both core teams in Indonesia and in the UK, as well as our external experts. So we wanted to ensure that all the materials included, there is a sense of consistency across the whole MOOC. So that was the first stage, where PPT branding, for example, was made. We created templates. We had a team responsible for that, and then the aims and ILOs of the whole MOOC, as well as the individual modules, were identified, and then pre and post this activities, a sort of common format for them, were also decided on. And then we had the selecting and developing content. And this was based on the literature review, needs analysis findings, as well as the actual users' needs analysis findings. And then we moved on to the activity design, so designing activities, again in light of the guiding principles, the art that I just mentioned. And then the final stage is reviewing and curating, which I believe is still is ongoing. Just finished, yes. So I'm going to show you some sample components of the MOOC. So as I said, for instance, we had all the PPTs. They had the branding. This was a British Council funded project, so this was reflected on the slides that we use across all lectures. And then we had these activity sheets that we use in pre-post lecture or module activities. Okay, so some examples for adding to what Carol mentioned early on findings of the needs analysis, some further examples in terms of, for instance, our users' needs, digital literacy needs. As you can see, the majority of them were not familiar with MOOC. They were first-time MOOC users, so it was very important for us to ensure that we kind of provide some scaffolding initially in terms of how to use MOOC and make sure that the whole design is simple and user-friendly, given that for the majority of them, this was the first MOOC course. So to give you an overview of another module, well, all modules with an example of one module unpacked here. We had the module introduction, and then in each module we had the tuning in part, and like I said, we had some sort of section activities to provide users an opportunity with an opportunity to think about their own practice and see, kind of prepare them for the input, and so that they can kind of see the link between the needs that they indicated in the needs analysis and the sort of input that is provided within that given module. And then we had the key input consisting of video lectures, interviews with some of the actual representative users from the Indonesian context, for example, some EMI teachers or EAP teachers, and obviously follow-up activities. Some further examples of how the MOOC is looking and different sections, and I think I've got one more slide, and we've got Carol here. So like I said, we made sure that there is consistency throughout the course. This would also help with the user-friendliness of the platform, so that it's, after perhaps doing a couple of modules, the users get used to the whole structure, and that's something that will be predictable for them as they move along the whole MOOC. Okay, and this is I think my final slide. That's it. I'm going to hand over to Sophia, who will be talking about the workshops that we've done so far.
Yeah, so you might have heard both Carol and Ida sort of alluding to the fact that things were not quite complete. So in fact, we were supposed to launch the MOOC, at the end of the project, and prior to that we were supposed to have a pilot ready to go and then tweak that and then do the formal launch. Well, unfortunately, life happens, and there were a number of delays that kind of impacted the completion of the MOOC. So in fact, it's not been complete. It's about 95%. Yeah. So that kind of changed the nature of the teacher development workshop. There was always a plan that we would do a face-to-face workshop, but it was a little bit strange thinking, oh, the MOOC is not ready, how are we going to launch it, what are we going to do? So Normala, who's our co-lead in Indonesia, we got together and we talked about it and said, okay, we can still do this face-to-face workshop, it'll still be valuable. It's really about giving people the opportunity to come together and to experience part of the MOOC, and just to give people a taster of what was to come. So that's the way that we kind of not sold it, but handled it. And so the MOOC, we did launch this CPD at the end of March, and with the aim, really the main aim was to have EAP and EMI teachers share their experience of teaching and to build professional networks. That was really the main aim, in fact, and also to have this opportunity to apply some theory to practice, albeit within a very confined space and time, and also to take away some knowledge of the MOOC to help them engage in further professional development, and then also to become a little bit familiar with the whole social political context in which the emerging EMI field has come from, both globally and within Indonesia. So those were the aims. And we did originally design a 3-day workshop. Day 1 was actually quite short, so it was an afternoon. Day 2 was a long day, and day 3 was actually an hour in the morning. And that was partly because we had to check out of the hotel. I did think, why are we planning such a tiny bit in the morning? And then I realised it was purely logistics. So the other thing to note, just on a really practical level, is that the reason why we had 3 days is because the Indonesian teachers are allowed a budget to go on CPDs of 3 days, and so they would have been funded and helped. And so that's why it needed to be restricted to that amount of time. The other factor was that it was taking place during Ramadan. It was not the perfect of all timings, and they would actually have preferred it to have taken place earlier, but we couldn't make it because of our teaching conflicts and stuff, so we had to put all of that into play. So in the end, what ended up happening was, again, logistical issues such as delayed flights, poor infrastructure, allowing people to arrive on time, didn't quite happen. So in fact, the first session was involved a really lovely welcome ceremony, which is part of the culture and part of the expectation that you have dignitaries there, that you have a formal ceremony. We sang the national anthem, we had speeches, and it was a really lovely event. And then that was followed by the getting to know each other session. And the getting to know each other was really pivotal because people were going to be meeting for the first time. I'll tell you a little bit more about the participants in a moment, but people were flying in from all different parts of Indonesia, but and a number of them actually came from Pontianak, where we were based. But it enabled them to get to know each other. In that session, they shared what they loved about their teaching practice and what their challenges were. And just for those simple questions generated a lot of really lovely discussions and sharing. So that was the Tuesday afternoon, and then the Wednesday was really the full day. And in the end, the participants decided that they because some of them were visiting and had never been to the island of Borneo before and wanted to go souvenir shopping. So the reality was we shifted that to the Wednesday. So we had a long Wednesday, and then the Thursday was actually free. So in that Wednesday, it was pretty jam-packed. We made decisions about the kinds of sessions that we were going to use based on the needs analysis, and as you heard, based on what the teachers identified as their main needs. And some of their main needs really were about teaching mixed proficiency level classes and materials design, adapting materials and how to best make use of materials in class. So we had sessions on these. We also had a little session on just contextualizing EMI within the global context and within Indonesia. And then later we had a session on teacher professional development and how the teachers could continue their professional development within the area. As I said, we decided on these sessions based on what the teachers said that they needed and wanted. We couldn't do all of the MOOC sessions, so basically what we did was, we downloaded the core materials, the pre-session tasks, like the tuning in task, the input, and then the follow-up task. So I downloaded that, and we used them live in the room. And so I would say, well, so this is what it's going to look like on the MOOC, but this is what we're doing in class today, and this is what you can do in your classrooms. And so we modelled different pairings, groupings, dynamic kind of active learning approaches in the class, in the hotel space, which was set up like a classroom. So we modelled that, and it was fun, and the teachers really engaged with it. And Yes, so we basically followed the MOOC learning journey, which was to look at a tuning in task. So for example, with this session, downloaded the sort of self-assessment tasks that teachers would normally look at. So attitudes about and knowledge of EMI in the broader context. And so that was a Likert scale, you know, agree, disagree, etc., with statements about the EMI industry. And after that, they would then, you know, compare their, just like a normal EAP or ELT classroom, talk to their partners, discuss where their understandings were in common or not. And then later what we did was, we couldn't watch all of the videos that were related to that section, so we just watched one or two. Well, in fact, we watched two videos. One by Nicola, talking about the global context, and one by Nirmala, talking about the Indonesian context. And then after they watched that, they went back to their tuning in task to discuss whether their attitudes had changed. And I was really surprised. Some of them said, oh, I actually thought this, but no, I don't. Having watched the video, I now think that. So that was really interesting. And I was genuinely, I think, surprised at how much activity that you know, engagement that generated. But funny enough, in the evaluation, you'll see that got a low score. But in fact, in the room, it was quite engaged, you know, and interesting. So yes, we followed this approach for each of the sessions, tuning in tasks, some input, and then some follow-up activity, whether it was discussion or reflection. In the materials adaptation one, we did have a little bit of input, and we had some input from one of the Indonesian speakers on video about different ways of engaging students, jigsaw activities, differentiated materials adaptation, that kind of thing. So we had a look at that, and then we had examples of chapters of books that they were using in class, and we asked them to then have a look at those chapters. They were basically just chapters of textbooks, one engineering, one business, and we asked the EAP and the EMI lecturers to congregate in little groups and to talk about how they would adapt those texts, what they would do in the classroom with those texts. And we did a couple of jigsaw activities where they exchanged information about that and reported back. So that was the kind of the nature of the day, some tuning in tasks, some input, some follow-up discussion and reflection. It was during Ramadan, people were fasting, so you know, by the end of the day people were a bit tired and stuff, so we had to kind of truncate a little bit, but basically that's how it was structured. In terms of where all the participants came from, as I said, they flew in, some of them flew in from different parts of Indonesia, North and South Sumatra, from Jakarta on the island of Java, and we all flew to Pontianak, so that's where it was taking place, and some teachers who actually worked in East Kalimantan had to fly all the way to Jakarta, and then Jakarta back to Pontianak, couldn't go across the country. So logistically it was really hard for the teachers to get there, and we really appreciated them being there. So we tried to make it as tailored as possible to their needs and wants. We had 29 participants attending, 17 EAP, 12 EMI. Only, I'm not sure why, but only 20 completed the evaluation of the workshop. So not of the MOOC or anything, but just that three-day workshop. 15 EAP teachers, 5 EMI, content instructors. And these were the courses that the teachers were engaged in. A lot of EAP teachers teaching to business admin or business management or engineering, accounting, etc. Or EMI specialists working in business management, banking and accounting, etc. in terms of the institutions, there were 10 vocational higher education institutions. I can't remember. I think we did say, yeah, these are not all university lecturers, but vocational college teachers. One university, one Islam-based university. And the range of experience, 14 teachers with 7 years or more, 2 teachers with 5 to 6, 4 teachers with 3 to 4 years experience. So quite a range there, but quite a number of quite experienced teachers. And in terms of the evaluation, we wanted to know just basically about the workshop. In terms of its length, was it appropriate? 18 out of 20 people said yes, organised well, met their needs, valued the opportunity to share ideas with peers, and interesting that all people were unanimous about that. Stimulating and engaging, broadened my awareness of EMI context. It's always curious, and you want to know what the neutral person really thought, or what the person who disagreed actually thought, but we didn't get a chance to do any follow-up discussion there. So other questions we asked in the evaluation, not questions but statements, these were Likert style statements. Broaden my awareness of strategies for dealing with mixed ability classes. We did focus on that a fair amount, and that was probably one of the most engaging activities, so maybe that's why we've got 20 respondents there. Gain some new strategies in materials development, also quite good. Strategies for applying into classroom, also 18. Normala really wanted to put this one in because she really, her vision is for collaboration, very much so, and bringing the groups of people together for her was personally really important. Collaboration here also well scored. So it was very well received. I would like to have spoken to this tutor. I understand more about EMA teaching practice from attending. It could be that actually the most engaging activity that we did do was not, some of the input for that was not totally EMI specific, but maybe more general English language and EAP teaching rather than EMI, so it could have been because of that. I also asked them which sessions they found the most useful, which sessions they found the least useful. It's kind of split. But certainly session 4 and session 5 were very useful for a group, and then maybe less so for the others. It's hard to know without going into more depth and speaking with teachers about what they actually found useful or not. And then some of the comments they gave. So we asked the question, overall, what did you like about the workshop? And I think this was, one of the common themes. Gave me a chance to share our teaching situation with others and fully engaged participants. Offered me a new networking so I can participate globally, connecting with people around the world. I think they were really pleased to meet each other. We also mentioned Elinet, which I'll talk about in a moment, as offering a great platform for further collaboration. So some positive comments there. I liked this comment in particular, I think, where the teacher says that they not only learnt something about English language teaching, but also about teaching Bahasa Indonesian to foreigners. And I thought, that's nice, what a bonus, to apply methodology. And suggestions, I think people just wanted, despite the fact that they were satisfied with the length of time, I think they really wanted more, and more teaching simulation, more feedback, extending the time. And I think we could definitely have done with a longer, CPD. Giving full training to all lecturers. I think that's about accessibility, and one teacher did say online would have been good as well, as face-to-face. And